We begin by seeing the San Fernando Valley, 16 kilometers north of Los Angeles. On the road, we see young Natalie driving alone when suddenly a landslide occurs and an avalanche of rocks collides with her car, pushing it off a cliff and making her plunge down. She survives the fall, but the vehicle is about to drop even further. Moments later, a helicopter arrives and a reporter interviews the firefighters, one of whom is Jobs and another is Marcus. They also introduce their chief, the fire chief Ray, who has over 600 rescues in his record. They arrive at the scene to rescue Natalie, whose car is about to plummet. Ray takes safety precautions and instructs the helicopter's approach. His assistants begin the rescue and descend to fetch Natalie. Jobs secures a cable to the car, but it slips, leaving him trapped, prompting Ray to proceed with the rescue. He quickly grabs Natalie and orders them to cut the car's cable, freeing Jobs and saving everyone. At the California Institute of Technology, Professor Lawrence speaks about earthquakes, one of which occurred in Japan and shifted an island a little over 2 meters from its original position. He mentions that the largest recorded earthquake had a magnitude of 9.5, generating tsunamis over 20 meters high. In his studies, he discovered that on the San Andreas Fault, which runs beneath California, earthquakes occur every 150 years. However, he warns that these events are overdue. It's only a matter of time before a new impact occurs on the tectonic plates. In the seismology lab, researcher Kim shows Lawrence some magnetic data captured by their sensors around Las Vegas, which preceded some tremors. With this information, they can predict the next quake. Thus, Kim suggests they should study the area. Back at home, Ray calls his daughter Blake, who lives with her mother as the parents are in the process of divorce. Ray spends some time looking at his daughter's things and finds a keepsake from when they were a complete family. At a dam, the two scientists check if their equipment is effective and happily discover they can predict tremors. Unfortunately, the sensors suddenly capture high magnetic signatures, followed by a massive 5.7 magnitude earthquake that cracks the walls. People flee in panic, and as Kim tries to escape, he sees everything collapsing. He notices a little girl and takes her with him, but he can't reach Lawrence. He throws the girl to his colleague while getting stuck on a steel bar, and unfortunately gets swept away by the debris in the water, leaving his friend shocked and paralyzed by the loss. Back with Ray, he is informed about the tragic event and soon visits Blake's house where his ex-wife, Emma, lives with her current husband, Daniel. Ray apologizes to Blake for not being able to take her to the volleyball game, but Daniel states that he will be traveling for work and can take her to college, so she agrees. They say goodbye, and before leaving, Ray leaves his daughter's bike with Emma, agreeing to sign the papers she sent. Ray leaves disappointed, still hoping for a reconciliation. At the fire station, Ray surveys the tragedy caused by the dam's water, which swept away nearby towns, and they need to begin rescues. On Daniel's private jet, he talks to Blake and shows her his almost completed building, which will be the tallest and finest in San Francisco. The two arrive at his company, and she waits in the reception area while, in memory of Kim, Lawrence decides to give an important interview and present his deceased friend's work. Suddenly, his assistants call him and show him data confirming that the San Andreas Fault is about to undergo significant impacts. Lawrence analyzes the maps and, based on the information, predicts that the San Andreas Fault is about to collapse. This shocks everyone present, and Lawrence orders everyone to evacuate. At the front desk of Daniel's building, Blake meets a young man named Ben, who is nervous about a job interview. Soon, Ben's brother, Ali, arrives to accompany him on this journey. Knowing his shy brother, Ali asks for Blake's number to give to Ben, making him even more embarrassed. When Ben is called for his interview, Ali stays and talks with Blake while Emma is speaking with a businesswoman. Ray calls her and apologizes for his earlier unpleasant behavior. She forgives him, but suddenly everything shakes and the building sways. Emma is terrified and tells Ray where she is, so he heads to the location. On the way, he witnesses the beginning of the destruction. In the lab, Lawrence realizes the seriousness of the earthquake, predicting magnitudes between 6 and 11 on the RTOR scale. The worst is yet to come, as data shows that the entire San Andreas Fault will be affected. Meanwhile, Blake says goodbye to Ali and leaves with Daniel. However, in the parking lot, they are caught by a tremor and, fearing the worst, speed away in the car. Unfortunately, the building suffers significant damage and they collide. The driver is crushed and
Daniel gets out of the car, promising to find help, leaving Blake even more terrified. He approaches a security guard for assistance, but the panic among the crowd is overwhelming, and many die with the walls collapsing. Scared for his life, Daniel decides to leave the building. Ben, seeing Daniel leave alone, decides to go after Blake. Back in the helicopter, Ray notices the city shaking and the buildings collapsing. Emma tries to convince people to go to the roof, but nobody follows her due to the overwhelming panic. She manages to reach the rooftop, but the building keeps collapsing, and she falls down several floors with the debris. Luckily, she survives and climbs to a visible point for Ray, who soon arrives to rescue her. Ray tosses down the rescue basket, and as a building collapses next to Emma, she runs and manages to grab the basket before everything collapses on her. Ray then brings Emma inside and takes off, dodging the collapsing buildings with the city in ruins after the quake. Back with Blake, she calls her father and informs him of her danger, giving him her location before the call cuts off. Ray tells Emma he's going to rescue their daughter. Blake is terrified, but luckily Ben and his brother find her. They try to free her with their strength, but the debris on top of the car is too heavy. Ben thinks fast and uses a hydraulic tool to lift the weight, but it's not enough. However, using his intelligence, he deflates the tires, lowering the car enough for Blake to free herself and escape before being crushed. They feel relieved, and she thanks them for the rescue, but the danger is real, and they need to leave the building quickly. In the streets, debris crushes some people, and the trio finds refuge in a safe place. In the lab, Lawrence is notified that the quake had a magnitude of 9.5, and magnetic readings indicate that the worst is still to come. The trio of young people enters an electronics store in search of a way to communicate and manages to contact their parents. Blake recounts what happened during Daniel's action of abandoning her, upsetting Emma. Ray advises Blake to go to a higher location so he can rescue her. Meanwhile, in the streets of the city, cowardly Daniel pushes a man into the street to protect himself from the debris sweeping the population. Inside the helicopter, the couple realizes they have a problem, and suddenly the aircraft begins to fall. Ray, being a skilled pilot, manages to land safely in a store. They grab some clothes and flee the chaos, finding a car that belongs to a thief. They take the car, but before leaving, an armed robber threatens Ray. The firefighter quickly disarms the man and gets in the car to drive. On California television, Lawrence makes a live announcement to everyone who can watch. He warns that the tremors are not over and a bigger earthquake is imminent, with San Francisco being the epicenter. On the road, the couple talks in the car when Emma alerts Ray about something. Ray stops the car and gets out, observing a large fissure in the ground, identifying the San Andreas fault that prevents them from passing. Ray backs up and asks an elderly couple with car troubles if there is a detour, but the man says just backtracking 100 kilometers. Recognizing the man's cap, Ray asks about a skydiving school, and in exchange for guiding them, they give their car to the elderly couple. At the skydiving school, Ray finds a small airplane that they will use to continue their journey. While refueling, Ray apologizes for being one of the reasons for their separation, and laments the day they lost their other daughter, remembering that he couldn't save her from a dangerous canoe crossing. Traumatized, Ray became indifferent and blamed himself, distancing himself from everyone. Emma comforts him, saying it wasn't his fault. After reconnecting, they set off to find Blake in San Francisco. We see the trio in the crowd following the evacuation route. Along the way, they stop at a fire truck to collect medical supplies and a communication radio. The high point of the city they are heading to has been blocked by destruction, so they must go to another location. However, Ben observes that people are heading for the mountains and suggests they do the same. But Blake insists that her father will come to rescue them. Ali also insists on going to a high place and following Blake's plan. Ray and Emma fly over the city, witnessing chaos and destruction at the airport, making it impossible to land. Spotting a baseball stadium, Ray instructs the plane to fall into the sea as he and Emma prepare to jump into the stadium. Ray ties Emma to him and jumps safely into the baseball stadium. The group feels another massive tremor, but Lawrence says that the worst won't be here but in San Francisco. Meanwhile, Blake, Ben, and Ali are climbing to a high place, and she notices Daniel's building nearby. Suddenly, the quake hits the city, causing more destruction, and in the chaos, Ben injures his leg on a shard of glass. And Blake stays next to Allie as the buildings fall like sandcastles. Bridges split in half, and the city shakes like ocean waves. Ray tries to guide people to shelter and helps a young girl escape certain death. After the dust settles, Ray and Emma find themselves in a completely destroyed city, fearing the worst for their daughter. Determined not to give up, Ray decides to navigate the city by boat. Meanwhile, Blake helps remove the glass and bandage Ben's leg. Back in California, Lawrence analyzes the data and finds out the quake had a magnitude of 9.6, the largest ever recorded. However, the tragedy has not ended, as Ray notices the ocean water receding, signaling a tsunami on the way. They need to get out of the city bay quickly. An alarm sounds throughout the city, and hearing this, the trio of young people rushes to reach the building. Ray on the boat sees the monstrous tsunami approaching and realizes that his only chance of survival is to outrun it before the wave breaks. Ray accelerates, tilting the boat nearly 90 degrees. A large cargo ship appears in front of him, but Ray narrowly avoids the danger. Back to Daniel, he is crossing the Golden Gate Bridge when the cargo ship, turned by the tsunami, collides with the bridge, destroying it and crushing Daniel under a container. Next, we see the massive wave sweeping everything in its path, including two elderly people who embrace before dying. People in the city center are also caught by the wave as ships are thrown over them. Back to the trio, they climb the stairs but can't continue as the path is blocked. They end up on a lower floor and soon hear a noise. Through the glass, they see the enormous wave toppling buildings, and it soon collides with theirs. As they are on a lower floor, the water enters and nearly sweeps them away, but the trio holds on and manages to stay safe for now. Ray enters the submerged city and sees total destruction, but still hopes to find his daughter alive. Fortunately, we see Blake with Ben and Allie, who soon ascend to a floor above. While Allie looks for something useful, Ben admires Blake's talent for taking care of herself and others. They end up kissing, which makes Allie happy to see that his brother has finally found someone. When the boy goes to fetch water, he sees two adults in a boat, and when Blake goes to check, she realizes they are her parents. Unfortunately, they can't get Ray's attention, who soon pulls away. Suddenly, a green light catches Emma's and Ray's attention, and when they turn around, they see their daughter nearby. It's a joyful reunion, but the young people are not safe. The building shakes and is now sinking. Water enters the floor, causing panic among the young people. Fortunately, Ben grabs his brother and leads him to safety. He even tries to return to look for Blake, but the water soon covers the entire floor. Outside, Ray tells Emma to wait, as he will rescue their daughter. Then he kisses her and dives into the water. Inside the floor, we see Blake with a flashlight searching for a way out, but she can't find one as the door is blocked by debris. Ray finds her and tries to clear the door, but fails. Ben leaves his brother on the floor above, asking him to wait while he looks for Blake. Unfortunately, this heroic action is interrupted as the building sinks a little more, causing Blake's floor to become completely submerged, unable to help. Meanwhile, Ray and his daughter take one last breath before she runs out of air, losing all hope. She begins to sink, and her father, refusing to lose another daughter, finds extraordinary strength and pushes the debris away. Finally, he manages to rescue an unconscious Blake and take her to the floor above. He finds Ben and his brother there and attempts to revive his daughter right there, while the building, supported by another building, reaches its limit and is about to collapse. Then, Ben grabs an iron pipe and tries to break the glass. Seeing this, Emma observes the situation, then runs to use the boat to break the glass and reach her daughter. They all get into the boat, and Emma accelerates as the building begins to collapse on them. However, fortunately, they escape alive. After reaching a safe distance, they anxiously watch Ray struggling to revive his daughter, who seems lifeless. It's a moment of deep sorrow, facing the possibility of losing their last heir. But Ray does not give up and continues to perform first aid. Fortunately, Blake breathes again and wakes up, hugging her parents. This leaves Ben and his brother happy, while Ray is relieved to have saved his daughter this time. On the other hand, Lawrence feels relieved to see that the nightmare has finally ended, as news outlets around the world report the destruction. Hours later, we see Ray and his family, along with the two brothers, in the mountains where the army has set up a support camp for the population. They watch the destroyed city, but also see ships from other countries arriving to help.